In a world hidden by shadows, where every choice carries weight, and loyalty is tested at every turn, a young boy named Naruto Uzumaki began a path few could imagine. Taken under the watchful eye of Danzo, he learned more than just the ways of a shinobi. He learned patience, strategy, and the quiet strength found in understanding the unseen. Tonight, we will follow his journey through trials, challenges, and the lessons that shaped him into a leader who walks in shadows, yet holds the light within. So, close your eyes, take a slow, deep breath, and let the story unfold. Imagine Konoha under a quiet moon. The village sleeps, peaceful, calm, and safe. Lanterns glow faintly in the streets, their warm light flickering against old wooden houses. Somewhere, a breeze stirs the leaves of the great Hokage monument, soft whispers carrying across the rooftops. Tonight is not about battles. It is not about training or shouts or rivalries. Tonight is about a gentle what if. What if the story was different? What if Naruto Uzumaki, the child of destiny, was not raised in the noisy world of laughter and loneliness, but in the quiet shadows, under the watchful eyes of Danzo? Picture this moment. The infant Naruto, wrapped in a small blanket, his future unwritten. Instead of being left to grow alone, instead of wandering through years of isolation, Danzo extends a hand of power, a hand of control, a hand that does not promise love, but does promise direction. The village remains silent, unaware that a single choice could shape the boy's entire destiny. In this world, Naruto would not be a child of mischief, laughing and running through streets, chased by villagers who misunderstood him. No, he would be raised within root, a world beneath the surface, a place of silence, a place where words are few and obedience is everything. Danzo's chambers are dimly lit. Stone walls surround the child. Torches burn low, their flames never dancing too wildly. Everything here is strict. Everything here is ordered. And here, Naruto takes his first breath of life's discipline. Instead of toys, he is given lessons. Instead of lullabies, he hears commands. Instead of laughter, there is silence. But listen closely. Even in this silence, you can hear something else. A heartbeat, a warmth, a small golden spark that refuses to die out. Naruto. Even when shaped by shadows, he carries the sun within him. And so, under the silver light of Konoha's moon, we begin a story not of battles, but of possibilities. Of how one choice, one path, could ripple through time, changing friendships, rivalries, and the very spirit of the village. Tonight, as you rest, you will walk this path with him, not as the loud prankster, not as the lonely child, but as a quiet shadow, a boy of root, guided by Danzo's stern hand. Take a slow breath. Imagine the stillness of that world, the cool stone halls, the gentle flicker of torchlight, the sound of footsteps, echoing softly and fading into silence. This is where our tale begins, and as you listen, let your mind drift, gently, quietly, just as Naruto drifts, into a life shaped not by freedom, but by discipline. Still, deep inside, his heart waits. A quiet flame, a hidden smile, a hope that someday he might discover the warmth he longs for. And with that thought, the story unfolds. The night was quiet when Danzo brought Naruto into the underground halls of Root. No crying filled the air. No mother's lullaby. Only the sound of footsteps, echoing in stone corridors, carrying the infant deeper into shadow. The torches burned low, casting golden light on rough walls. A chill lingered, as though the air itself whispered, "Here, silence is the rule." Naruto's tiny hands curled against the blanket. His eyes, still too young to understand, blinked slowly in the dim light. And Danzo watched him with a calculating gaze. Not with the warmth of a father, not with the softness of a guardian, but with the sharp vision of a man who saw potential, a weapon, a vessel for something greater. The cradle prepared for him was simple. No colors, no toys, just a wooden frame and a thin blanket. Here, Naruto would not know the bright laughter of other children. Here, he would learn silence before speech, obedience before play, discipline before dreams. Danzo stood near the cradle, his shadow stretching long against the wall. He spoke only once, his voice low and steady. "From this day, you belong to the village." Naruto did not understand the words, but the tone carried through the air like stone pressed into water. Firm, unyielding, absolute. And so, his first memories were not of warmth, but of dim torchlight and echoing footsteps. Time passed. Days became weeks, and weeks became months. In Root, time had no rhythm. There was no sun to rise and fall. Only lamps, torches, and the steady movements of those who lived beneath the earth. Naruto grew slowly into this world. Other infants had giggles, but Naruto's giggles never echoed long. Whenever he laughed, the sound was met with stillness. Caretakers en route did not smile back. They fed him, clothed him, but offered no warmth in return. So, the laughter faded. It lingered in his chest sometimes. A small spark, but it no longer spilled into sound. Instead, Naruto's eyes grew sharper. Quietly, he watched. He studied the movements of those around him, the way Root operatives stepped soundlessly, the way their gazes never wandered. Even as a toddler, he mirrored them. Tiny footsteps trying to make no sound. Small breaths, held still in his chest. He was learning the language of shadows. Danzo visited rarely, but when he did, Naruto felt the weight of his presence. He was not a gentleman. And yet, in his own way, he ensured Naruto survived. There were no soft words, but there were lessons. Lessons wrapped in silence. One day, Danzo stood before the boy, his cane tapping lightly on the stone floor. Naruto, only 3 years old, looked up at him with wide eyes. "You are the village's strength," Danzo said. "You must learn to endure." The words were heavy, too heavy for a child to understand. But Naruto absorbed them anyway, like ink sinking into paper. Endure. that would be his first word of destiny. At night, Naruto lay in his small bed. No blankets of comfort, no lullabies, only the dim flicker of a torch in the hallway. He stared at the ceiling, and sometimes he imagined. He imagined a sky, not the ceiling of stone, but a vast open blue, where clouds floated like soft pillows, and sunlight poured down, gentle and golden. He had never seen such a sky. Not yet. But somewhere deep inside, his heart told him it must exist. And so, even in darkness, Naruto dreamed of light. In those early years, Danzo had given him structure, silence, discipline. But the boy's spirit was not so easily silenced. A flicker remained. A flicker that whispered, "I am alive. I am more than silence. I am more than a weapon." And though no one else could see it, Naruto carried that spark quietly. Day after day, night after night. The underground halls would shape him, but the fire inside would never go out. This was the beginning. The silent beginning of Naruto Uzumaki. Raised not by laughter, but by shadow. Morning en route did not begin with sunlight. It did not begin with birdsong, or the warmth of dawn. Morning en route was marked only by footsteps. The quiet shuffle of operatives moving through the halls, their sandals brushing against stone. It was a rhythm Naruto came to recognize, a pattern that told him the day had begun. He would rise from his simple bed, stretching small arms, his breath faint in the still air. There was no voice to wake him gently, no parent whispering his name, only silence. And so Naruto learned to wake himself. Meals were plain: a bowl of rice, a small serving of vegetables, sometimes miso soup. Nothing more. The hall where children ate was narrow, lined with low tables. Dozens of young faces sat in silence, each child eating slowly, carefully, their eyes fixed on the food before them. No chatter, no laughter, only the quiet sound of chopsticks against bowls. Naruto, still young, once tried to hum while eating. A small tune, just a little sound, to make the silence less heavy. But the caretaker placed a firm hand on his shoulder, a quiet warning. And Naruto lowered his gaze, his song unfinished. It was a lesson. Here, joy was not shared. Here, silence was discipline. And so, he ate in silence too. After meals came training. Not the loud training of children at the academy, where shouts and laughter filled the air. En route, training was wordless. Every exercise began and ended with stillness. Naruto, small and restless, was taught to hold positions for long minutes, standing still, breathing steady, eyes forward. At first, his legs ached. His arms trembled. He wanted to move, to run, to shout. But when he shifted even slightly, a caretaker's gaze fell upon him. Cold, unblinking. And Naruto returned to stillness, learning that en route, even movement had to be earned. There were drills in balance, drills in silence, even drills in breathing. "Control your breath," the instructors would say. Though their words were few, their meaning was sharp. Naruto sat cross-legged, trying to steady the rise and fall of his chest. In, out, in, out. But sometimes his breaths came too quickly. The spark of energy within him was hard to contain. His heart beat fast, as if it longed to run ahead of him. Other children sat motionless, their faces calm as stone. Naruto envied them. He wondered why his body always wanted more. More movement, more sound, more life. And yet, with each passing day, he grew better. His breath slowed. His steps softened. His movements became deliberate. He was learning discipline, not because he wanted to, but because he had to. In the afternoons, the children practiced hand signs. Not jutsu, not yet. Just the signs, forming each with precision, again and again. Naruto's small fingers fumbled at first. They twisted the wrong way, shaking with effort. The caretaker corrected him, pressing his hands into the right shape. Cold fingers guiding warm ones. No words of encouragement. Only correction. And Naruto, determined not to fail, kept practicing. Over and over, until his hands obeyed. It was tiring, monotonous. But en route, there was no enough. There was only continue. Evenings came quietly. The children were dismissed back to their quarters. The torches flickered low. The air grew colder. Naruto would lie in bed, his body sore from drills, his mind heavy with silence. But within that silence, something stirred. He imagined laughter. He imagined voices. Not harsh commands, not corrections, but voices calling his name, warm and kind. Sometimes, he whispered to himself. A small word, a small sound, just to remind himself that he still could. And though the halls demanded silence, Naruto carried those whispers inside. They were his secret, his rebellion, his spark. Day after day, the rhythm of shadows shaped him. Wake to footsteps, eat in silence, train in stillness, breathe in order, practice without pause. But within this rhythm, Naruto's heart beat differently. Louder, warmer, unwilling to be silenced completely. He was learning the way of Root. But the way of Naruto was still alive. Hidden. Quiet. Waiting. And though no one could see it yet, that spark would matter. One day, for now, he was only a child, living in shadows, learning their rhythm, becoming part of them, but dreaming, always dreaming, of something brighter. Root was not empty. Though silence ruled its halls, Naruto was not the only child there. There were others. Children with eyes too old for their years. Children who walked quietly, ate quietly, and moved like shadows. At first, Naruto only watched them. From across the dining hall. From the corners of the training rooms. From his place in line during drills. They rarely looked back. But sometimes, just sometimes, their eyes met his. And in those brief glances, something passed between them. Not words, not smiles, but a recognition. We are the same. One boy sat near him during meals. Older by perhaps 2 years. His hair was dark, his expression still. Naruto never heard his voice, But once, when Naruto dropped his chopsticks, the boy picked them up and set them gently beside him. No words, no nods, only that small gesture. For Naruto, it was like a spark in the darkness. Proof that someone had seen him, that someone cared, even if only a little. During training, there was a girl. Her movements were sharp, precise. She never faltered. The caretakers rarely corrected her. Naruto admired her skill. He tried to copy her posture, the way she held her hands, the way she stepped silently. Once, when he stumbled, she glanced at him. Her eyes softened for just a moment, barely noticeable. But Naruto noticed. It was not warmth, not like the warmth he dreamed of. But it was something, a quiet acknowledgement. I see you. The children of Root did not play. They did not chase each other through corridors or laugh at silly mistakes. But they existed together, side by side, silent companions in shadow. Naruto began to feel their presence, even without words. When one sat near him, he felt less alone. When another trained beside him, he pushed himself harder. It was not friendship, not the kind he would one day know, but it was connection, faint, fragile, yet real. One evening, after a long day of drills, Naruto lingered in the hallway. The torches burned low, casting soft light on stone walls. Another child passed by, a boy his own age. Their eyes met briefly. Naruto wanted to say something. Anything. A word. A sound. But his throat tightened. Words were not welcome here. He knew that. And so, instead, he gave a tiny nod. Barely a movement. A simple tilt of the head. The boy paused, looked at him for a long moment. Then, slowly, he nodded back. That was all. 2 small nods, shared in silence. But for Naruto, it was enough. At night, lying in his narrow bed, Naruto thought about those moments. The chopsticks returned, the girl's soft glance, the boy's silent nod. They were small things, tiny, fragile pieces of connection. But they mattered. They told him he was not invisible. He was not alone. Even in silence, there were threads weaving between them. Unspoken bonds. Root did not allow laughter, but it could not erase humanity. And Naruto, with his spark of warmth, felt those bonds more strongly than anyone. Days continued. Meals. Training. Breathing. Stillness. But now, when Naruto moved through the halls, he noticed the others more clearly. The way one child's shoulders drooped in exhaustion. The way another clenched fists too tightly. The way a girl's eyes flickered toward the ceiling, as though she longed for the world above. He saw them. And sometimes they saw him too. There was no conversation, no laughter, no play. But there was understanding. And for Naruto, that was enough to kindle something inside. A quiet belief that even in shadows, people could still connect. Danzo never spoke of such things. To him, children of Root were tools, weapons for the village. Connections were weakness. But Naruto's heart disagreed. Even in silence, he felt warmth stirring, a reminder that he was more than a weapon, that they all were. And so, as he drifted to sleep at night, he carried those silent moments with him. A chopstick returned, a glance of kindness, a nod of recognition, tiny fragments of light, shining in the quiet darkness. En route, companionship did not speak. It did not laugh. It did not shout. But it existed. Quiet, unseen, yet alive. And for Naruto, those silent companions became a lifeline. A reminder that even in Danzo's shadow, the bonds of humanity could not be erased. The stone corridors of Route were quiet once more. Torches flickered gently along the walls, casting soft golden light. Naruto walked beside Danzo, his small footsteps almost silent. Today was different. Today he would learn not only to move in silence, but to understand what that silence meant. Danzo stopped near a low stone pillar, his shadow stretching long across the floor. He did not kneel, did not bend. He stood as a pillar of authority, as the world of Root itself often seemed to stand firm, unyielding, and absolute. "You are not just a child, Naruto," he said. His voice was low, deliberate, measured. "You are the village's secret, a shield, a weapon, and a guardian." Naruto looked up at him, eyes wide. He had heard similar words before, but today they carried weight. Danzo's gaze held no warmth, yet it demanded attention. It demanded understanding. "You must learn to give yourself completely," Danzo continued. "Your life, your choices, even your thoughts, all belong to the village." Naruto swallowed. The words were heavy, too heavy for a small child to carry fully. And yet he tried. He nodded silently, absorbing the lesson as he had learned to absorb so many others. The first lesson of the day was loyalty. Not the simple kind that comes from love. Not the kind that grows naturally between friends or family. This loyalty was absolute. It was obedience without question, dedication without pause. Naruto practiced the routines Danzo demanded, and each time he felt the invisible threads of loyalty weaving tighter. To serve the village, to protect it, to follow the rules of Root, was to become part of something greater than himself. Even though he was small, even though his heart longed for warmth, he obeyed. He learned. He became still. And in that stillness, he found a quiet power. Next came the lesson of secrecy. Root thrived in shadows, and Naruto, even as a child, needed to understand the importance of silence. Danzo took him to a chamber, dimly lit, the air cool and heavy. He handed Naruto a small, folded piece of paper. Inside were instructions. "Do not speak of this," Danzo said. "Do not show it. Do not tell anyone, not even your companions. Secrets are shields, and shields protect." Naruto nodded. He carefully folded the paper again, tucking it into his small sleeve. From that day forward, he carried not just paper, but the weight of silence. He understood that words could be dangerous, that thoughts could be weapons, and that trust must be measured, even among those who seemed closest. The third lesson was sacrifice. Danzo's voice was steady as he spoke, not angry, not soft, but resolute. To protect the village, sometimes you will give more than you want. Your time, your comfort, your desires, even your joy. You will learn to endure hardship, to carry pain quietly, and to move forward regardless. Naruto listened carefully, his small hands resting on his knees. He imagined what it meant. He imagined giving up laughter. He imagined giving up play. He imagined walking quietly, unseen, unheard, and still feeling important. Even as a child, he felt the weight of these words. They sank slowly, layer by layer, into his mind and heart. And in that sinking, he began to change. Danzo also taught him about protection. Not the protection of hugs or soft words. Not the protection of holding someone's hand. This was a deeper kind of protection. Protection is unseen, Danzo said. It is shadows that move without sound. It is plans made before danger arrives. It is a shield that you carry inside yourself, even when no one knows it exists. Naruto tried to imagine it. A shield that was invisible. A shield made not of metal, but of thought, of silence, of discipline. He felt a flicker of pride, a quiet warmth that whispered to him, I can do this. Even en route, even under Danzo's stern gaze, Naruto could feel purpose. And purpose, as Danzo taught him, could be powerful. But even with these lessons, Naruto's heart remained tender. He remembered moments of quiet connection with the other children. A returned chopstick, a nod in the hallway, a shared glance in the training room. Danzo did not understand these small sparks. He did not speak of them. He did not encourage them. Yet the child in Naruto clung to them. Tiny lights in the darkness. Hints of the warmth that still lived inside him. Evenings were filled with reflection. Not allowed. Never allowed. Naruto would lie in his narrow bed, torches flickering outside, and think about the day's lessons. Loyalty, secrecy, sacrifice, protection. Words that were heavy, but carried meaning. He repeated them silently, not as commands, but as mantras, guiding him, shaping him, preparing him. He imagined himself standing strong, like Danzo said he should. A shield for the village. Silent, unseen, unbroken. But still, inside him, the faintest warmth glowed. A reminder that he was still a boy, still a child, still capable of laughter, even if it had to be hidden. Day after day, Naruto practiced the lessons, step by step, breath by breath, motion by motion. And each day, he became more root, more disciplined, more silent, more careful. Yet the spark inside, the spark of the child he might have been, never faded completely. And though Danzo saw only potential and duty, Naruto began to understand something deeper. That even in shadow, even in discipline, even under strict orders, a boy could still carry light. And that light, quiet and small as it was was beginning to grow. Naruto's life under Danzo was unlike any childhood most children knew. He did not wake to laughter. He did not play in the sunlight. He did not cry freely or shout with joy. Yet, in the shadows of Root, he was alive in ways that were subtle, careful, and deliberate. Every day began with measured steps. Naruto would wake not because the sun rose, not because anyone called his name, but because he had learned the rhythm of the halls. The sound of sandals brushing against stone, the faint echo of another child's movements, the quiet shift of a torch flame, all told him the day had begun. He learned to rise without making a sound, to breathe quietly, to move with precision. Even as a small child, he knew that every action carried weight. Every misstep could draw attention. And en route, attention was rarely kind. Meals were quiet, disciplined affairs. No chatter filled the air. No laughter echoed. Children ate slowly, deliberately, their eyes often fixed on their bowls. Naruto, at first, struggled. His heart wanted joy. His spirit wanted to laugh, to hum, to release some small fragment of himself. But Root had taught him differently. Correction was immediate. A hand on his shoulder, a stern gaze. And Naruto adapted. He learned to eat in silence. He learned to control his impulses. Yet, inwardly, a fire remained. A whisper of the boy he might have been. A spark that hummed softly beneath the surface, waiting for a safe place to grow. Training was rigorous. Not the playful, loud kind of training found in the academy. Here, movements were controlled. Breaths were measured. Every gesture, every step, every glance was observed and analyzed. Naruto's energy, boundless in nature, was folded carefully into precision. Where once he would have charged, he now paused, observed, and executed with exactness. Even as a small child, Naruto began to notice patterns. The way the instructors moved, the timing of corrections, the subtle cues in a companion's posture. He learned to anticipate, to calculate, to strategize silently. This was not encouraged openly. It was a survival instinct, a necessity. And yet, in these small observations, Naruto's mind grew sharper, more aware, more capable than ever before. Emotion, though carefully controlled outwardly, was not absent. Naruto felt deeply, but he had learned to fold these feelings inward. Anger, once explosive, was now a quiet ember, guiding his decisions rather than consuming him. Frustration, once loud and chaotic, was now a signal to pause, to observe, to adapt. Joy, once expressed in loud laughter, was now reserved for private moments, for tiny sparks that no one else could see. The flicker of a torch on a wall, the pattern of shadows dancing across stone, the warmth of imagining sunlight that he had never seen. Even sadness became a secret companion, folded into his movements, shaping his careful, deliberate behavior. Interactions with other Root children were silent, yet profound. Naruto observed. He noticed the tilt of a head, the slight droop of shoulders, the subtle movement of eyes. These small gestures spoke volumes. He learned to communicate without words. A glance, a nod, a small shift in posture. These were his language. He guided younger children quietly. He offered silent warnings. He shared understanding without speaking. Through these actions, he began to build connections. Not friendships in the conventional sense, but bonds. Faint, fragile, yet meaningful. The other children responded, some slowly, some hesitantly. But over time, they learned that Naruto's presence could be trusted. Even curiosity transformed under Root's discipline. Where once he might have shouted questions aloud, Naruto now observed silently. He analyzed outcomes before taking action. He considered consequences carefully. And in doing so, he became thoughtful, patient, and cautious beyond his years. This careful curiosity gave him power. He could learn faster, adapt better, and anticipate the world's responses before anyone else. Daydreams became Naruto's refuge. At night, in the quiet of his bed, he would imagine sunlight pouring through leaves. He would picture wide fields, running barefoot and laughing freely. These dreams were carefully tucked away, hidden even from himself at times. But they sustained him. They reminded him that he was more than Root, more than Danzo's child, more than a weapon. Naruto's personality was defined by contrasts. He was quiet yet attentive, controlled yet imaginative, cautious yet capable of warmth. He observed, calculated, and adapted. Yet, beneath it all, a spark of childlike energy remained. He began to notice small injustices, small acts of kindness, small opportunities to guide others quietly. He became a subtle leader, not by commanding, but by being present. Other children began to follow him unconsciously, trusting his judgment without words. He learned influence without force, direction without demand. Emotional intelligence grew quietly within him. Naruto began to sense when a child was afraid. He could tell when someone needed reassurance. Not words, not physical comfort. Just presence. Just a small, careful gesture. Even Danzo's strict discipline could not erase this empathy. It remained hidden, shaped into subtlety, but alive, ready to guide him when needed. Imagination also shaped his strategies. Naruto did not simply dream. He simulated. He planned. He imagined scenarios and outcomes. He considered risks and rewards. He practiced mental maneuvers long before physical action was possible. Even as a child, this foresight distinguished him. Where others relied on instinct, he relied on preparation. And yet, for all this discipline and calculation, Naruto never lost the essence of a boy. A small smile at an imagined sunlight. A quiet sigh at a pattern of shadows. A whisper of laughter when no one could hear. These moments were secret treasures. Moments where the fire of childhood still burned. Moments that reminded him he was alive. As he grew, Naruto's personality became a delicate balance. Silence and observation shaped by Root. Caution and calculation forged by necessity. Warmth and empathy protected in secrecy. Curiosity and imagination tucked quietly away, yet always alive. He became something unique, a child molded by shadows, yet carrying light within. A boy disciplined by the strictest hands, yet capable of hope and warmth. This blend would define him in the years to come. Even Danzo, stern and unyielding, could not fully shape what Naruto might become. The boy's essence remained resilient. Shaped, yes, but not erased. Directed, yes, but not silenced. Quieted, yes, but never extinguished. Naruto's personality under Danzo was a study in contrasts, precision and spontaneity, silence and internal voice, obedience and private rebellion, strength and vulnerability. And in that balance, Naruto learned to survive. He learned to thrive quietly. He learned the subtle art of living in shadows, without losing the light within. He understood more than anyone realized. Root's lessons were rigid. Danzo's expectations were absolute. Yet Naruto navigated the complexities with a growing mastery. He measured every word, every glance, every action. He considered the consequences of even his private thoughts. He learned strategy in silence. He learned empathy in secret. He learned resilience in solitude. And, quietly, he began to understand something profound. Even in a world of shadows, a boy could carry light. Even in a life of discipline, he could remain free within himself. Even when shaped by strict hands, he could remain uniquely, irreversibly, Naruto. Naruto's life revolved around Danzo, not like a parent and child in the ordinary sense. Not like warmth and comfort guiding a small boy through the world. No, this was a different bond. A bond defined by discipline, by expectation, by unspoken rules. And yet, in this bond, a complicated respect quietly grew. Danzo was a shadow in human form. A presence that demanded attention, not through words of affection, but through absolute control. Naruto learned early that his every action, even his very thoughts, were measured against Danzo's expectations. A tilt of the head, a misstep, even a fleeting expression of frustration were observed. And yet, despite the ever-present scrutiny, Naruto did not shrink. He learned to adapt, to survive, to grow within the boundaries of Root. There were moments when Danzo's presence was terrifying. A single word, a sharp glance, a quiet command could shift the balance of the day. Naruto learned to anticipate these shifts, to read them, to respond before mistakes could even form. It was a constant exercise in vigilance. Even the smallest lapse could invite correction. And correction, though not cruel in physical pain, was exacting in its demand for perfection. Naruto's body became attuned to these expectations. His movements became deliberate. His expressions became neutral. Even when anger or frustration rose within him, he folded it quietly, like a page pressed into a book. But fear alone did not define the relationship. Respect also emerged. Naruto, even as a small child, recognized Danzo's wisdom. He saw the way Danzo observed, how he calculated outcomes, how he anticipated danger long before it arrived. Naruto admired the clarity of his vision, the precision of his actions, and the unwavering certainty of his purpose. There was something magnetic about Danzo's presence. Even when it was intimidating, Even when it demanded obedience, it inspired a small spark of desire in Naruto. To be capable like him. To understand the world as clearly as he did. Daily life under Danzo was a mixture of discipline and observation. Naruto would wake and move with careful precision. Meals were silent, orderly. Training was rigorous. Every action was under scrutiny. Yet, Danzo allowed no recognition. No praise for achievement. No reward for obedience. Only expectation. And from that, Naruto learned something subtle but powerful. Motivation could be internal. It did not always require external validation. He began to set small goals for himself. To perfect a stance. To execute a movement without error. To observe a shadow and anticipate its source. And when he succeeded, he felt pride quietly, secretly. No words were exchanged, no acknowledgement given, but the feeling burned brightly inside him. A seed of self-respect and confidence. There were also lessons in loyalty. Danzo expected it not just in action, but in thought. To serve the village, to follow Root's principles, to obey without hesitation, was to be loyal. Naruto learned to internalize this loyalty. He practiced it silently. He tested it on himself. He wondered what it truly meant to give oneself completely. Sometimes, in quiet moments, he imagined Danzo not as a figure of authority, but as a guardian. A protector, not just of the village, but of those who depended on him. This image was fragile, easily shattered by the sharpness of Danzo's commands. Yet it remained, hidden beneath layers of discipline and fear. The relationship was not simple. Naruto often felt frustration. He longed for approval, for warmth, for guidance beyond correction. There were moments when he wished Danzo would notice his efforts. Even a small nod, a quiet word, something to acknowledge the boy beneath the training. But Danzo rarely gave such acknowledgement. Instead, he expected the boy to grow without it. And Naruto did. He learned resilience, self-reliance, independence. He realized that his own judgment, his own understanding, could be trusted when external validation was absent. Yet, a subtle tension always lingered. Naruto wanted to impress Danzo. He wanted to earn his recognition. And, at the same time, he resented the rigid control, the constant scrutiny, the suppression of simple joys. This tension became a quiet, internal dialogue. Naruto would reflect on every encounter, every correction, every command. He analyzed his responses. He imagined alternative actions. He considered how to navigate Root's world more effectively. This internal life shaped him in ways external discipline could not. He became introspective, reflective, and strategic, even as a child. Interactions with other Root children also colored the relationship. Naruto noticed that some of them feared Danzo outright. Others moved through the halls like shadows, silent and cautious. Naruto, however, navigated this world differently. He observed Danzo carefully, not just for fear of reprimand, but to understand his methods, his patterns, his expectations. He began to anticipate not just commands, but Danzo's reasoning. To read the subtle cues that signaled what was desired and what was forbidden. In doing so, Naruto gained a quiet mastery of his environment. He became not just obedient, but perceptive. Not just disciplined, but adaptive. Even when Danzo's methods seemed harsh, Naruto recognized their purpose. Each correction, each silent watch, each strict order, it was designed to shape, to prepare, to create not just a soldier, but a strategist, a guardian, a boy who could survive in shadows. And Naruto, despite his private frustrations, began to see value in this guidance. He began to respect Danzo, not necessarily as a father, but as a teacher of shadows and discipline. Yet, rebellion remained. Not open defiance, not loud confrontation, but quiet rebellion. Moments of imagination, moments of secret laughter, moments of kindness toward the other children, even when rules forbade it. These acts were small, almost invisible, yet they were essential. They kept the boy inside him alive, untouched by fear, untouched by rigid authority. And Danzo, though formidable, could not suppress these small sparks. Naruto's understanding of Danzo was complex. He saw the man's strengths, the precision, the strategy, the unwavering commitment to the village. He also saw the limitations, the inability to show warmth, the reliance on fear and discipline to control. And in seeing both, Naruto learned discernment. He began to evaluate authority, to balance respect with quiet independence, to navigate obedience with subtle self-expression. Ultimately, their relationship was symbiotic. Danzo shaped Naruto, taught him discipline, strategy, loyalty, and observation. Naruto softened Danzo's rigidity, silently. In his quiet moments, he reminded the root world that humanity remained, even under the strictest control. Danzo may have believed he was molding a weapon, but Naruto was more than that. He was learning the rules of the world and learning how to navigate them with care, precision, and subtle warmth. Even in the smallest gestures, their bond persisted. A nod from Danzo could inspire. A brief glance could warn. And Naruto, attuned to every nuance, learned to respond with thought, with strategy, and with an understanding far beyond his years. In this quiet dance of authority and obedience, of discipline and private rebellion, Naruto learned resilience. He learned foresight. He learned subtlety. And, above all, he learned that even in shadows, a spark could survive. By the time Naruto reached his later childhood, the lessons had embedded deeply. Danzo's authority shaped his body and mind. Root's discipline shaped his habits and reflexes. But the boy's spirit, the private inner spark of warmth, curiosity, and imagination, remained. The relationship between Danzo and Naruto was never conventional. It was built on rules, observation, expectation, and discipline. Yet, it created a bond of understanding, a connection forged in shadows, that would influence Naruto for the rest of his life. Even in fear, even in frustration, even in silence, Naruto had learned to respect, adapt, and survive. And in this survival, he discovered the unique truth of his life under Danzo. Obedience could coexist with quiet rebellion. Discipline could coexist with imagination. Fear could coexist with respect. And through it all, Naruto remained, unmistakably, irreversibly, himself. Naruto had been en route long enough to understand its rules, its rhythms, its quiet expectations. He moved through its corridors with confidence now, yet the boy inside him remained alert, curious, and full of a quiet, controlled energy. The first missions assigned to him were simple in appearance, yet complex in their lessons. A shadow behind a merchant, a message carried unseen, an observation recorded without disturbance. Each task was a step into the world beyond the walls of Root. The day of his first real mission arrived quietly. A soft morning sun filtered through the cracks of the Root training halls, painting thin lines of light across the stone floor. Danzo did not speak much. He handed Naruto a folded scroll. "Observe," he said. "Report. Do not be seen. Do not be caught. Learn everything you can. And return." Naruto nodded. His heart beat faster, but not with fear, with anticipation. This was the world where his training met reality. He moved through the streets of the village. Small, silent, careful. Every footstep measured. Every shadow considered. Every passerby observed. The first lesson of the mission was simple yet profound: patience. Naruto had been trained to move quickly, strike decisively in training. Yet here, observation required stillness. Hours passed as he crouched behind barrels, as he noted patterns of merchants and guards. Time slowed. His body relaxed into quiet motionlessness. And yet, his mind was alert, absorbing every detail. He recorded what he saw carefully, folding it into the folds of his mind, so that when he returned to Root, he could relay the information accurately. Even the simplest interactions became lessons. A child arguing with a vendor, the flicker of tension in a guard's posture, a sudden movement that could have alerted him all taught him something about the world, about people, about risk. And Naruto, though a boy, began to see the connections. Cause and effect. Timing. The importance of foresight. Danzo's methods emphasized strategy over force. Naruto learned to see the world like a chessboard. Every person, every movement, every shadow a potential piece in a larger game. His small body could not rely on strength. But his mind could anticipate, could calculate, could adapt. This became his unique advantage. Other children might falter in uncertainty. Naruto thrived. The missions grew more complex over time. He began to carry messages through dangerous streets, to watch enemy movements, to gather information that could not be revealed directly. He learned to walk unnoticed, to blend into crowds, to disappear when needed. Even as he moved through the world, he carried the lessons of Root in every step. Loyalty, discipline, observation, patience, and secrecy. Yet, with every mission, his internal world expanded. Naruto could not ignore what he saw. The struggles of the people, the moments of kindness, the small acts of bravery that went unnoticed. He recorded them mentally, not as official reports, but as part of his understanding of the world. Even under Danzo's strict guidance, the boy inside him absorbed humanity. He learned that strategy was not only about survival, but about understanding people, their strengths, their weaknesses, their hearts. On one particular mission, he was tasked with following a man who was suspected of selling information to enemy forces. The man moved quickly, nervously. Naruto's small body kept to the shadows. Every turn, every glance, every footstep had to be measured. Hours passed. Naruto felt the weight of time pressing against him. Yet he did not waver. He had learned endurance en route, patience in training, observation as second nature. When the man finally paused in a quiet alley, Naruto noted every detail. The papers he carried, the subtle gestures, the hidden weapon tucked at his waist. He returned to route, his report precise, complete, and silent. Danzo read it carefully, then nodded. No praise, no outward acknowledgement. But Naruto felt a quiet surge of pride within himself. He had succeeded. He had followed the rules. He had survived the test. Missions also taught him adaptability. Nothing ever went exactly as expected. Paths were blocked. People behaved unpredictably. Information was incomplete or misleading. Naruto learned to remain calm, to adjust silently, to anticipate outcomes even as circumstances changed. He discovered that true strategy was not rigidity, but fluidity. It was the ability to think ahead while reacting in the moment. And in this discovery, he found a quiet exhilaration. The missions carried emotional weight too. Naruto observed fear, desperation, and courage. He saw people make choices under pressure. He saw loyalty tested and hearts revealed. Even though he could not intervene openly, he learned empathy. He learned the subtle art of understanding without judgment. He carried this knowledge quietly, folding it into his strategies, into his understanding of people. Danzo's influence was ever present. He expected excellence. He demanded discretion. He allowed no mistakes. Yet he also provided guidance, not in words of encouragement, but in careful, deliberate instruction. He corrected quietly, sharply, yet the correction taught more than words could. Naruto absorbed every lesson, every correction, every observation. He began to anticipate not just his own actions, but the intentions and reactions of others. Through the missions, Naruto's personality continued to evolve. He became more cautious, more observant, more deliberate. He learned to navigate danger with intelligence rather than force. Yet, the boy inside him remained. Curious, imaginative, capable of small acts of kindness, even when the rules forbade it. These small sparks kept him alive in a world of shadows. They reminded him that life, even under strict discipline, contained light. Naruto also learned the value of silence. En route, silence was not emptiness. It was information. It was observation. It was control. On missions, silence became his greatest weapon. He moved quietly, observed everything, and acted only when necessary. Through silence, he gained insight. Through patience, he gained power. Through observation, he gained control. By the end of his early missions, Naruto was transformed. He was no longer merely a child. He was a strategist, a silent observer, a careful actor. He understood people, situations, and consequences in ways few children could. Yet, he also retained the spark of youth. A spark that allowed him to imagine, to hope, to see possibility in a world dominated by rules and shadows. He had learned that strategy was not just about survival. It was about understanding, about adapting, about using knowledge and perception to navigate life with skill and care. Even in the quiet of his own room, after missions, he reflected on everything he had seen. Every shadow, every gesture, every whisper. He replayed scenarios in his mind. He imagined alternative outcomes. He refined strategies quietly, privately. And he dreamed, not just of missions, but of life, of a world beyond route, of laughter, of sunlight, of voices calling his name. These dreams were fragile, hidden, but they fueled him. They reminded him that even a child trained in shadows could hold light within himself. Through these early missions, Naruto learned lessons that could not be taught in training halls alone. Observation and patience, adaptability and strategy, empathy and understanding, silent leadership and influence, internal motivation and pride. Each mission shaped him. Each challenge honed him. Each quiet victory strengthened his resolve. He had begun as a child under Danzo, but he was becoming something more. A boy of shadows and sparks, a strategist and observer, a survivor and dreamer. And so, with every step he took, every mission completed, every shadow observed, Naruto moved forward quietly. Through Root's strict lessons, through Danzo's watchful gaze, he discovered the first truths of strategy and life. That intelligence could outweigh strength, that observation could outweigh force, that patience could overcome haste, and that even in a world of shadows, a spark of light could survive, grow, and guide the way. The day of the first major test arrived quietly, yet with a weight that pressed on Naruto's chest. He had faced small missions before, tasks of observation and minor stealth, but this was different. Danzo's voice, calm but firm, had given the order without ceremony. "This will show if you are ready," Danzo said. "Your mind, your body, your judgment, everything will be tested. And you will succeed, or you will learn the cost of failure." Naruto nodded. He had learned not to show hesitation. Yet, inside, a quiet tension flickered, like a candle in a breeze, reminding him of the significance of what lay ahead. The mission itself was complex, layered with danger. He was to infiltrate a small enemy encampment at dusk, observe their activities, map their positions, and, most importantly, return without detection. Unlike prior assignments, this task required more than stealth. It required foresight, decision-making under pressure, the ability to adapt when the unexpected appeared. Naruto's training had prepared him physically. Root had honed his senses. His reflexes were precise. His stamina tested. But the true test was mental. Could he navigate uncertainty? Could he anticipate without full information? Could he maintain calm when everything seemed to shift at once? He approached the encampment quietly. Shadows stretched across the ground as the sun fell. The flicker of torches illuminated figures moving among tents. Naruto paused, crouched low. He observed. He calculated. He waited. Patience was his first weapon. He did not rush. He did not leap into action. He allowed time to reveal patterns, mistakes, and opportunities. He noted every movement. The guard pacing near the gate, the way two sentries exchanged nods, the flicker of a lantern revealing the edge of a hidden path. Every detail was stored carefully in his mind. A mental map forming as he crouched silently, invisible to the world around him. Hours passed, yet Naruto did not falter. His small body ached, but Root had taught endurance. His mind wandered in quiet reflections, calculating, imagining outcomes. This was a new form of patience, a test not of strength, but of quiet, sustained focus. Every slight sound could betray him. Every misstep could spell failure. And yet, amidst the tension, a small spark of exhilaration burned. This was his proving ground. Not just for Danzo, not just for Root, but for himself. The first challenge emerged unexpectedly. A guard moved outside the pattern Naruto had observed. A shift in the wind carried a faint sound of rope scraping against wood. Naruto froze. He pressed himself lower to the ground, breathing carefully. His mind raced, but his body remained still. This was the moment his training met reality. He needed to adjust instantly, to predict what the guard would do, to act with precision if discovered. He waited, observing the guard's movement. When the man paused, Naruto noted the best path forward. Slowly, deliberately, he moved. Step by step, shadow by shadow. He reached a vantage point over the encampment. From here, he could see patterns clearly. He could anticipate the next movement of every sentry. He could calculate the safest path back. But the real test was still ahead. Inside one tent, he observed a figure of particular importance. This was not merely a mission of observation. It was a test of judgment. Naruto had to determine the priority of his focus. What mattered most? What could be ignored? What decisions required courage? And what required patience? He studied the figure carefully. Their gestures, their tone, their attention. He imagined every possible scenario. Confrontation, escape, misstep, distraction. Every option was considered. Every risk assessed. Night fell completely. Shadows merged. The world became a palette of gray and black, with only the faint flicker of torches as markers. Naruto's mind sharpened in the darkness. He realized that strategy was not just anticipation, but adaptation. The ability to change plans seamlessly, to react with calm, to think while the world moved unpredictably. Every sound, every shadow, every small detail mattered. He listened to the rustle of leaves. He noted the rhythm of footsteps. He predicted paths before they were taken. A sudden challenge tested his reflexes. Two guards stepped onto the path he had calculated as safe. Naruto froze. Time seemed to stretch. He analyzed. Could he retreat unnoticed? Could he move forward without being seen? Could he create a distraction to ensure safety? The answer came from instinct honed by training. He adjusted, moved, and disappeared into the shadows. The guards passed without noticing. The first true application of his lessons. Patience, observation, adaptability. Each one critical. Each one a step toward mastery. By midnight, Naruto had completed the observation portion. He had mapped every guard, every patrol route, every hidden approach, and he had gathered the information Danzo required, and he had done so without detection. Yet, the mission was not over. The return path demanded more than stealth. It demanded calculation, timing, control of the mind and body. He traced his steps back carefully, avoided newly positioned patrols, skipped over obstacles silently. Each decision made with the precision of a strategist. When he returned to route, Danzo was waiting. No words of praise, no acknowledgement beyond a sharp glance. Yet, Naruto knew the test was passed. Every lesson had been applied, every skill executed flawlessly. Inside, he allowed himself a quiet smile, a whisper of pride, a spark of joy. Even in silence, even under scrutiny, he had succeeded. The first major test taught Naruto more than any previous mission. He learned the weight of responsibility. He learned the importance of careful observation. He learned patience under pressure. He learned to think critically when circumstances changed unpredictably. He learned the value of adaptability, the power of strategy, the necessity of self-reliance, the quiet thrill of mastering the unseen. But the test also illuminated something else. Even in success, challenges were relentless. The world beyond route was complex, unpredictable, and dangerous. Victory was never guaranteed. Mistakes carried consequences. Naruto realized that discipline alone was not enough. Courage, insight, and subtle judgment were equally essential. And the spark of inner light, the warmth he secretly nurtured, was as vital as any skill. Through the trial, Naruto also deepened his understanding of Danzo. He saw the intent behind the strict discipline. The lessons were not cruel for cruelty's sake. They were designed to prepare him for situations where hesitation could mean disaster, where observation could mean survival, where strategy could save lives. And in this realization, Naruto's respect grew. Not as affection for a parent, but as recognition of a teacher who molded a child into a strategist, a survivor, a shadow walking with care through danger. Even in private reflection, Naruto processed every detail. He replayed the night in his mind. Every movement, every decision, every near encounter. He imagined alternatives, analyzing what might have happened if one step had been misjudged, or one shadow had been misread. This quiet analysis became a ritual, a way to refine his skills beyond the classroom or training hall, a way to ensure mastery over not just action, but thought itself. By the time he slept that night, Naruto was transformed. He had faced danger and uncertainty. He had applied every lesson silently learned. He had navigated shadows, both literal and metaphorical, and emerged not only unscathed, but wiser. The first major test was more than a mission. It was a crucible, a place where the boy's discipline, intelligence, patience, and courage were tested, where his inner spark and humanity were preserved, where his mind and heart were stretched toward mastery. And through it all, Naruto realized a profound truth. Strategy was not merely planning. Patience was not merely waiting. Discipline was not merely obedience. Courage was not merely facing danger. All of these were connected. All were tools for survival. All were pathways to understanding. And the boy who had once laughed freely, who had shouted with energy, who had dreamed aloud, now walked silently through the shadows, carrying light within himself. After completing his first major test, Naruto returned to Root, not as the same boy who had left, but as someone subtly transformed. Discipline, patience, and strategy had been tested and proven. Yet something inside him stirred, something quieter, softer, and more elusive. The need for connection beyond Root's rigid rules. Danzo's lessons had shaped him. Root had trained him to be observant, silent, and self-reliant. But now he realized that survival in the wider world required more than obedience and stealth. It required trust, empathy, and allies. The first person he noticed was a boy slightly older than him, named Kaito. Kaito was unlike the others en route. He did not move with the same meticulous precision at first glance. He laughed quietly when Naruto made minor mistakes. But his eyes always betrayed a sharp intelligence. Naruto watched him from the shadows. He observed Kaito during exercises, during stealth drills, and during tasks assigned by Danzo. Slowly, Naruto noticed patterns in Kaito's behavior. Kaito was impulsive at times, yet his instincts were almost always correct. He made mistakes, but he learned quickly. And in those moments, Naruto recognized something familiar. A spark of life that could complement his own disciplined precision. Their first interaction was subtle. Naruto was performing a late-night observation exercise, moving silently along a rooftop when he noticed a shadow slip beneath him. Instinctively, he froze, watching the figure. Kaito turned abruptly, almost colliding with him. "Careful," Naruto whispered. "I'm already careful," Kaito replied, a hint of mischief in his tone. They shared a brief, silent nod of understanding. No further words were necessary. Naruto sensed a kindred spirit, someone who moved through the world with intelligence, who understood the subtle rules of observation and action. Over the following weeks, Naruto and Kaito found themselves assigned similar missions. They did not speak openly of friendship. Root did not allow for such softness. But in shared glances, coordinated movements, and quiet observations, a bond began to form. A bond built on mutual understanding, trust, and complementary strengths. Naruto's patience and careful calculation balanced Kaito's instincts and adaptability. Kaito's energy and quick thinking complemented Naruto's precise strategies. Together, they moved through missions with a quiet synchronicity. Even Danzo, whose scrutiny was almost omnipresent, could not ignore the efficiency of their combined skills. The first major mission together tested not only their abilities, but also the emerging bond. Benin. They were assigned to observe a small enemy outpost near the outskirts of the village. The mission required careful coordination. Naruto was to track movements from a distance, while Kaito infiltrated the area closer to the tents. At first, Naruto's mind raced with calculations, assessing risks and possible outcomes. But he also paid attention to Kaito, anticipating how his ally would react to unforeseen events. When a sudden guard appeared near Kaito's path, Naruto's mind raced. He called out a barely audible signal, and Kaito adjusted his movement instantly. No words, only synchronized action. The mission was a success. Naruto returned with precise information. Kaito reported observations and minor irregularities. Together, they had completed what could have been a complex failure. Back en route, they allowed themselves a rare moment of quiet acknowledgement. "You were precise," Kaito said softly. "You were predictable," Naruto replied, a small smile hidden in the shadows. It was their first moment of lightness in the shadowed world of Root. A moment that quietly reinforced trust. Other allies began to emerge, though more subtly. There was Ayame, a girl with an uncanny sense of timing and reflexes, who could move through the shadows almost silently. She rarely spoke, but her actions conveyed clarity and purpose. Naruto observed her during training sessions, noting her precision and attention to detail. He began to understand that alliances did not require conversation. They required observation, understanding, and recognition of strengths. Ayame's presence complemented both Naruto and Kaito. Her ability to anticipate danger and act with precision filled gaps neither of the boys could cover alone. The trio's missions grew more challenging. They moved beyond observation exercises into more complex tasks, requiring infiltration, message delivery, and information gathering under real threat. Each mission tested not only individual skill, but the cohesion of the group. Naruto found that working with allies introduced new dimensions to strategy. He could no longer rely solely on his own calculations. He needed to anticipate their movements, their instincts, their reactions. He needed to consider their safety as part of the plan. And in doing so, he realized that leadership was not about control alone, but about coordination, trust, and understanding. The lessons of teamwork were not always smooth. Differences in approach caused tension. Kaito's impulsiveness occasionally collided with Naruto's patience. Ayame's silent, deliberate style sometimes slowed the others. Yet, each conflict became a learning moment. Naruto began to understand negotiation, compromise, and subtle guidance. He learned to communicate without words, to signal intentions through gestures and movements. He discovered that influence did not require authority, but clarity of thought, precision of action, and consistency. One mission highlighted the importance of empathy and trust. The group was tasked with observing an enemy supply route. Unexpectedly, a child appeared near the path, a small figure lost and frightened. Kaito wanted to move the child away immediately. Ayame hesitated, sensing potential danger, and Naruto considered the implications carefully. He made a quiet decision: to protect the child while maintaining their stealth. Step by step, he guided the child silently to cover. Kaito and Ayame followed his lead. The mission continued, successful and unnoticed. But Naruto had learned a deeper lesson. Strategy was not only about survival, but about human consideration, even when rules seemed to demand otherwise. The bond between the three deepened. They developed unspoken signals, patterns of coordination that allowed them to act as one. They shared small moments of levity, brief smiles, quiet gestures, hidden from the eyes of root superiors. And in these moments, Naruto discovered a rare warmth, a reminder of life outside shadows and discipline. Even Danzo, observing silently, could not suppress the subtle growth he had inadvertently nurtured. Through alliances, Naruto also began to see the value of shared reflection. After each mission, he would mentally replay scenarios, considering both successes and failures. Kaito and Ayame, in their own ways, did the same. The result was a quiet, collective refinement of skills. A silent exchange of strategy, insight, and adaptation. Naruto began to understand that strength was amplified through trust, and knowledge was sharpened through collaboration. He realized that alliances were not mere conveniences, but essential to mastery. Yet, even as bonds formed, Naruto never lost his internal spark. The discipline, observation, and careful calculation instilled by Danzo remained. But alongside these, the boy inside him, curious, imaginative human, grew quietly. He learned that true allies did not only share tasks, they shared understanding. They shared insight. They shared trust that could withstand mistakes, uncertainty, and danger. In their presence, Naruto discovered balance. Discipline coexisting with empathy. Stealth coexisting with subtle warmth. Strategy coexisting with humanity. The first key allies shaped Naruto's development profoundly. They introduced him to perspectives outside the rigid shadow of root. They challenged his assumptions. They supported him in ways silent and subtle, and they allowed him to grow beyond the strict framework of obedience. With them, he discovered that survival was not solitary. That strategy was not purely mechanical. That courage was not only facing danger alone, but trusting others to face it together. By the end of this stage in his life, Naruto had transformed once again. He was still a boy trained in shadows, disciplined under Danzo's watchful eye. But he was also a strategist, a collaborator, a silent leader. He had discovered the profound value of trust, coordination, and subtle empathy. The first allies had shown him that strength could be shared, that observation could be combined, that strategy could be enriched through collaboration. And, most importantly, they reminded him that even in the shadows, light could exist, quiet, subtle, persistent, and guiding. Even in the silence of the night after missions were completed, Naruto reflected on their bonds. He understood that Root's training had shaped him, but alliances had refined him. He had learned that mastery of the world required more than discipline. It required understanding, trust, and shared strength. And so, Naruto moved forward with Kaito and Ayame quietly at his side, ready for whatever challenges awaited. The shadows remained, but within them, small sparks of connection and trust glimmered, lighting the path ahead. The air was thick with tension that night, so thick it seemed to settle into Naruto's lungs, slowing his breath, sharpening his awareness. He had faced missions, tests, and trials. But nothing prepared him for the first real clash, the kind where lives hung in fragile balance, where a single misstep could shatter everything. Danzo had assigned the operation with minimal words. "The target is a rogue cell," he had said. "Observe, report, neutralize if necessary. Do not fail. Do not be discovered." Naruto had studied the dossier, analyzing patterns, assessing risks, calculating outcomes. Yet, as the night drew near, he understood instinctively that this mission would demand more than calculation. It would demand courage, improvisation, and trust. Kaito and Ayame would accompany him. The three moved like shadows along the outskirts of the village, the moon casting thin, silver streaks across their path. Their coordination was nearly perfect. Silent signals, subtle gestures, shared understanding. Everything honed through prior missions. Yet, even in synchronicity, a tension lingered. Something about this mission carried an edge sharper than before. Naruto's mind processed every detail. Wind direction, guard rotations, patrol paths, possible escape routes. He mapped contingency after contingency, each step mentally rehearsed. As they approached the rogue cell's hideout, the first challenge appeared. A sentry emerged unexpectedly, moving against the patterns Naruto had observed. Kaito's instincts flickered. Ayame's posture stiffened. Naruto froze, heart steady, calculating the safest course. "Wait," he whispered, and the others obeyed. The sentry moved past without noticing them, but the brush with detection left a cold trace of adrenaline behind. It was the first reminder. The unpredictable nature of conflict was constant. No plan survived intact. No calculation could account for every variable. Inside the hideout, shadows stretched long and ominous. Figures moved with a subtle rhythm, silent but alert. Naruto's pulse quickened, not with fear, but with the acute awareness that his decisions would determine not just his fate, but the safety of Kaito and Ayame. They split into careful positions. Naruto observing from a vantage point, Kaito moving along the perimeter, Ayame silently preparing an entry path if needed. The operation began quietly, steps measured, breaths controlled, eyes alert. The first true danger emerged suddenly. A hidden patrol returned unexpectedly, blocking Kaito's retreat. Naruto's mind raced. Options flashed. Diversion, confrontation, retreat, or stealthy rerouting. He chose precision. A subtle gesture from him, and Kaito adjusted, moving into shadows, slipping past guards with practiced agility. Ayame followed Naruto's signals, silent and exact. The rogue cell was aware now. The risk of exposure had escalated. Conflict erupted, sharp and sudden. A guard discovered their presence. He moved to confront them, and instinctively, Naruto assessed every element. Distance, speed, angles of attack, escape routes. But this time theory met reality. He acted, not rashly, but decisively. A small misdirection, a calculated movement, and the guard was neutralized without raising alarm. Naruto felt the familiar thrill of controlled risk. The mission demanded focus, strategy, and split-second adaptation. It was a lesson in the immediacy of danger, the weight of responsibility, and the fragility of careful planning. Kaito and Ayame proved invaluable. Kaito's quick thinking handled unexpected threats, turning potential detection into opportunity. Ayame's precision and timing allowed them to move without leaving traces. Naruto realized that alliances had evolved beyond coordination. They were now about mutual trust in life or death circumstances. Each relied on the other's instincts and judgment. Each covered gaps the others could not. Together they became more than the sum of their skills. The rogue cell, realizing intrusions, activated defenses. Alarm systems, small traps, and sudden patrols challenged every plan Naruto had rehearsed. Yet, he remained calm, calculating new strategies in real time. He directed Kaito with subtle hand gestures, signaled Ayame with a flick of his eyes, and adapted to shifting circumstances as though he had foreseen them all. This was no longer theory. This was survival. The first major conflict had become a test of everything Root had trained him to do. Patience, observation, adaptability, strategy. Amidst the chaos, Naruto also learned a lesson in restraint. A target moved into a dangerous position. Kaito instinctively wanted to strike. Ayame hesitated, considering the risks. Naruto weighed the consequences. He knew that action now could compromise the mission. He signaled subtly to hold. They obeyed. The target moved again, unknowingly, into a controlled path. A minimal, precise action neutralized the threat, and the team avoided unnecessary exposure. The conflict escalated further when a second patrol discovered anomalies. Naruto's mind raced. He considered all possible outcomes. He predicted movements, calculated timing, and devised subtle distractions. Kaito executed quickly. Ayame followed flawlessly. Step by step, the team turned potential disaster into manageable obstacles. Naruto understood, more than ever, the importance of mental agility under pressure. He had trained his body and mind, but now, he realized, his intuition was as crucial as any skill learned en route. By midnight, the mission reached its climax. The rogue cell's leaders were cornered in a room, unaware of the precise tracking Naruto had orchestrated. The information they carried was vital. The decision to act or merely observe required judgment. Naruto considered the consequences carefully. Strike prematurely, and the mission might fail. Wait too long, and danger could escalate. He chose strategy over impulse. He observed silently, timed the movements of guards, and created an opening that allowed Kaito to retrieve the information safely. Ayame's timing ensured no trace of their presence remained. The mission concluded without detection. Returning to Root, the team was silent, not from fear, but from reflection. They had faced the first major conflict. They had survived. They had succeeded. Naruto understood something profound. Discipline and training could take him far, but real-world conflict demanded more. Courage, intuition, trust, and adaptability were equally essential. Danzo's reaction was minimal, as expected. He nodded, acknowledging the success without words. Yet Naruto felt a quiet satisfaction that no praise could enhance. They had navigated chaos with skill, preserved life, and achieved their objective. The first major conflict was no longer just a test. It was proof. Proof that Root's teachings had been internalized. Proof that alliances could function under pressure. Proof that the boy from the shadows could act decisively when everything depended on him. Even in the quiet aftermath, Naruto reflected on the lessons learned. Observation and calculation must coexist with intuition. Trust in allies can mean the difference between success and failure. Patience under pressure can prevent catastrophe. Adaptability is essential when circumstances change unexpectedly. Courage is not absence of fear, but action in spite of it. These truths shaped him, quietly molding his strategy, mindset, and understanding of the world beyond Root. By dawn, Naruto stood silently at the edge of the village, watching the first light of day paint the streets in soft gold. He felt the weight of responsibility, the thrill of survival, and the quiet reassurance that he had emerged stronger, wiser, and more capable. The first major conflict was behind him. The lessons would last a lifetime. And within him, the spark of the boy who could imagine, hope, and dream remained, guiding him through shadows, through danger, and toward the path of mastery. The days following the first major conflict passed with a deceptive calm. Naruto, Kaito, and Ayame continued missions, refining coordination and skills under Root's watchful eyes. Yet, beneath the surface, a subtle tension simmered, like the faint hum of wind through silent branches. Root had always operated in shadows, and shadows often concealed more than just darkness. They hid motives, loyalties, and intentions. Naruto, trained in observation and strategy, began to notice subtle irregularities, small slips in reports, inconsistencies in timing, whispers of discontent he could neither ignore nor fully understand. The first hint of betrayal came quietly. During a routine surveillance mission, Naruto noticed an unusual pattern in one of the senior operatives' movements. A man named Ryu, who had been silent and reliable, moved with purpose that did not align with the orders. Naruto's instincts flared. He observed carefully, following shadows, not letting curiosity override caution. He noted details. How Ryu lingered near confidential files, how his eyes darted toward mission targets rather than assigned posts. The boy's mind worked methodically. Betrayal was rarely loud. It was quiet, subtle, strategic, and he had seen enough of the world to recognize it. Naruto decided to act cautiously. He did not confront Ryu directly. He did not reveal suspicion to Kaito or Ayame. Instead, he collected evidence silently, documenting each movement, each deviation from procedure. The tension grew. Every mission afterward carried a shadow of doubt. Naruto's trust, once solid, now felt fragile, like a thin bridge over a dark ravine. Yet even in this uncertainty, he remained disciplined. Danzo's lessons reminded him, observation first, action second. Reaction without analysis could ruin everything. The betrayal became unavoidable during a critical operation. Naruto, Kaito, and Ayame were assigned to extract sensitive intelligence from a hostile territory. Everything had been calculated meticulously. every path mapped, every contingency planned. Yet, midway through the mission, Ryu appeared unexpectedly, not as an ally, but as an obstacle. He had altered patrols, shifted positions, and sabotaged their timing. Naruto's pulse steadied. The betrayal was real, but panic had no place in the shadows. He quickly adapted. He signaled Kaito with subtle hand gestures. Ayame understood without words. Together they adjusted their movements, navigating the altered environment with precision. The confrontation was inevitable. Ryu attempted to block their exit. His eyes gleamed with a calculated menace. "You shouldn't have suspected," he whispered, a faint smirk crossing his face. Naruto's mind raced, evaluating options. Confrontation could escalate into violence, risking exposure and mission failure. Retreat could compromise intelligence. He chose a path of strategy, misdirection, and controlled engagement. Naruto moved first, creating a diversion with a subtle manipulation of shadows and light. Kaito flanked silently. Ayame secured the rear, and together they bypassed Ryu without direct conflict, maintaining stealth while neutralizing immediate threats. Back en route, the tension lingered. Naruto reported anomalies, but the truth of Ryu's betrayal was complicated. Ryu had influence among certain operatives, and revealing him outright could destabilize internal hierarchy. Danzo, as always, remained calm and detached. He analyzed the situation quietly, his decisions swift and pragmatic. Naruto understood the lesson clearly. Betrayal was rarely a simple moral matter. It was a test of perception, judgment, and discretion. Sometimes, the correct action was silence, observation, and measured response. This event reshaped Naruto's understanding of trust. Alliances were no longer guaranteed. Even in a disciplined organization like Root, loyalty could be fragile, influenced by ambition, fear, or personal motives. Naruto reflected quietly, analyzing his reactions, considering what he could have done differently, and planning for future contingencies. Trust was now a tool, carefully measured, extended selectively, even toward those who seemed loyal. Kaito and Ayame became even more important. Their bond had been forged through shared missions, and, in the face of betrayal, it proved essential. They communicated through subtle gestures and shared intuition, maintaining cohesion despite the internal instability around them. Naruto realized that allies were not just companions in action. They were anchors in uncertainty, anchors that allowed him to navigate treacherous waters with confidence. The next mission tested both skill and emotional resilience. Naruto, Kaito, and Ayame were tasked with monitoring a rogue faction within the village. The potential for betrayal was high. Every operative could be a threat. Every shadow could conceal danger. Naruto approached the mission methodically. He observed every interaction, every movement, every inconsistency. He learned to read subtle cues, slight hesitation, avoidance of eye contact, irregular pacing. Through observation and patience, they identified a second potential traitor. Naruto devised a plan that isolated the individual without direct confrontation. Kaito and Ayame executed seamlessly, neutralizing the threat while maintaining stealth. The experience left Naruto contemplative. He had always trusted his instincts, but now he understood the layers of complexity in human behavior. People were unpredictable. Allegiances shifted, and even those closest could act against expectations. Yet betrayal did not weaken him. Instead, it refined him. It sharpened observation, honed judgment, and deepened awareness. Naruto realized that mastery required not only physical and strategic skill, but also psychological insight. Danzo acknowledged the outcome, silently but approvingly. Naruto had handled both the immediate danger and the broader implications of internal treachery. He had adapted, protected his allies, and preserved the integrity of the mission. En route, such competence earned respect, even without overt praise. Naruto felt a quiet satisfaction. He had faced betrayal, navigated deception, and emerged stronger, wiser, and more perceptive. Through betrayal, Naruto also discovered a subtle truth. Strength alone was insufficient. Trust must be measured. Observation must be relentless. Strategy must account for human unpredictability. And yet, even in shadows and deceit, small sparks of loyalty and connection, like Kaito and Ayame, remained invaluable. They illuminated the path, guiding him through danger, uncertainty, and moral complexity. By the end of this period, Naruto had grown beyond the simple frameworks of root. He was disciplined, strategic, and patient. He was observant, adaptable, and cautious. But he had also learned to navigate human complexity, to measure trust, and to rely on allies whose loyalty had been proven through shared trials. Betrayal had taught him resilience, and resilience had strengthened his understanding of leadership, strategy, and the quiet power of subtle influence. Even in moments of solitude, Naruto reflected on these lessons. The boy who had once operated with simple obedience now thought critically about human behavior, the fragility of trust, and the necessity of measured action. He had faced shadows among shadows, and in doing so, had discovered not only danger, but insight, awareness, and subtle wisdom. And though the path ahead remained uncertain, he felt prepared to navigate it with clarity, courage, and the quiet confidence that comes from surviving the first real betrayal. Naruto felt a subtle shift within himself, a quiet but undeniable change, as days of rigorous training and complex missions accumulated. Strength, he realized, was not merely measured in raw power or speed. It was measured in precision, patience, and the ability to control one's body and mind simultaneously. Danzo's teachings, once rigid and harsh, now formed a foundation for this understanding. The boy who had arrived at root filled with curiosity and defiance had evolved into someone capable of integrating discipline, strategy, and instinct. Yet, even in this growth, he maintained the spark of his own identity, the internal light that refused to be extinguished by shadows. The training sessions had grown more intense. Danzo had introduced exercises designed to push limits, combining stealth, endurance, and rapid calculation under unpredictable scenarios. Naruto's body and mind were tested relentlessly. Pain became a companion, fatigue a familiar shadow. But he discovered that mastery required embracing discomfort rather than fearing it. Each day, his reflexes sharpened. He could anticipate movements almost instinctively. He could calculate distances, trajectories, and angles with greater precision. And, perhaps most importantly, he could remain calm under extreme pressure, a trait that would define his growing power. One significant breakthrough came during a night mission designed to test his sensory skills. He was sent to track a target moving through dense forest terrain. The target was skilled and cautious, yet Naruto had learned to observe not only physical movement, but subtle signs, the displacement of leaves, the rhythm of footsteps, the faintest shift in shadows. Step by step, he followed. Minute by minute, he adapted to the terrain. He predicted the target's path before it became apparent. And when confronted with unexpected obstacles, a sudden trap, a concealed patrol, he reacted with both precision and creativity. By the mission's end, he had successfully completed it, collecting information without leaving a trace. And yet the real victory lay not in the mission, but in the mastery of his own capabilities. The growth of power was not merely physical, it was also strategic. Naruto began to see patterns in situations that others overlooked. Every mission became a chessboard. Every shadow, every movement, every minor action held significance. He learned to anticipate outcomes, weigh probabilities, and execute plans with calculated efficiency. Even his allies, Kaido and Ayame, began to notice the subtle transformation. Naruto's decisions were faster, more precise, and yet they retained adaptability, allowing him to adjust seamlessly when circumstances shifted. Power also came with understanding the value of restraint. During a mission to infiltrate a rival cell, Naruto confronted a target who, if acted against immediately, could jeopardize the entire operation. The instinct to strike was strong, yet he calculated consequences. He delayed action, observed carefully, and discovered an alternative approach that neutralized the threat, without unnecessary confrontation. This subtle understanding of timing, of when to act and when to wait, became a cornerstone of his growing power. Alongside physical and strategic mastery, Naruto honed emotional resilience. He had faced betrayal, danger, and life-threatening challenges. Each experience strengthened his capacity to remain calm, to analyze without panic, and to maintain trust selectively yet effectively. The growth of power was inseparable from self-awareness. Naruto understood the limits of his own endurance, the vulnerabilities of his companions, and the unpredictable nature of enemies. This awareness allowed him to act decisively, even in situations where raw strength alone would have failed. A turning point in his growth occurred during an advanced route training exercise. The exercise simulated a multi-layered infiltration, combining stealth, combat, and intelligence retrieval under extreme conditions. Naruto's body and mind were pushed beyond previous limits. Fatigue and mental strain threatened to disrupt focus, yet he drew upon lessons from prior missions: observation, adaptability, and trust in allies. Step by step, he executed the plan with precision. Each movement was calculated. Each decision weighed for optimal outcome. By the conclusion, he had completed the exercise flawlessly, demonstrating mastery that surpassed expectation. The exercise also revealed the integration of his powers with allies. Kaito's instincts complemented Naruto's calculated precision. Ayame's timing filled gaps unnoticed by both. Together, the trio functioned as a cohesive unit, each member amplifying the capabilities of the others. Naruto realized that true power was not solitary. It was interdependent, enhanced through collaboration, and strengthened by trust. The shadows in which they operated became a space of synergy, where strategy and skill merged seamlessly with subtle intuition. Beyond physical and strategic growth, Naruto's mental acuity sharpened. He began to anticipate not only immediate threats, but potential chains of consequence. Every mission became a dynamic puzzle. Every movement, every shadow, every sound could signal change. He developed the ability to think several steps ahead, predicting outcomes with increasing accuracy. This foresight allowed him to act proactively, rather than reactively, ensuring that control remained in his hands even in chaotic scenarios. Another aspect of his growth was understanding the psychological dimension of power. Naruto observed how fear, trust, and hesitation influenced outcomes. He learned to manipulate perception subtly, to use misdirection effectively, and to maintain psychological advantage even without direct Naruto had grown in ways few could imagine. Physical skill, mental acuity, and emotional resilience were now firmly in place. But there remained one frontier untested, the realm of pure strategy. The ability to orchestrate complex operations, anticipate moves multiple steps ahead, and manipulate outcomes with precision. This was the stage where discipline, experience, and intuition converged. Danzo understood this implicitly. He observed Naruto carefully, assessing not just his actions, but his thought processes. Strategy was the final layer, the crown upon the foundation of skill. And Naruto was ready to ascend. The first exercise in strategic mastery was deceptively simple. Naruto was tasked to oversee a coordinated mission involving multiple route teams, operating in separate sectors of the village. The objective: gather intelligence, disrupt hostile networks, and return undetected. At first glance, it appeared routine. Yet, Naruto knew that complexity lay beneath simplicity. Timing, alignment of actions, contingencies for unexpected events, all had to be calculated. Even minor errors could cascade into failure. He began by mapping every detail mentally. Patrol schedules, environmental conditions, individual capabilities of allied teams, and possible threats from rogue operatives or rival factions. Naruto also considered human behavior. He analyzed potential reactions, predicting hesitation, impulsiveness, or overconfidence. Every ally, every subordinate, every possible adversary was a variable in the grand equation. The mission became a living puzzle, each element a piece that had to fit precisely. He formulated multiple contingencies. Each scenario was considered carefully. If Patrol A moves unexpectedly, then adjust Team B's positioning. If information is compromised, create a diversion. If confrontation occurs, neutralize risk while maintaining operational integrity. The execution tested every facet of his mastery. Naruto coordinated with subtle gestures, quiet signals, and brief whispers. Teams responded almost intuitively, guided by his planning and prior training. They moved like shadows within shadows, aligned perfectly with his vision. Even when unforeseen obstacles arose, a misstep by a junior operative, a sudden patrol deviation, or environmental hazards, Naruto adjusted seamlessly. Decisions were made within seconds, executed without hesitation, demonstrating strategic thinking in real time. Kaito and Ayame, his closest allies, played crucial roles in this phase. Kaito's improvisational skills complemented Naruto's calculated foresight. Ayame's timing and precision allowed the plan to flow smoothly, despite minor deviations. The three operated as one, their synergy amplifying the effectiveness of strategy beyond individual capability. Naruto realized that mastery was no longer individual. True power lay in coordination, anticipation, and the integration of diverse skills into a unified framework. A turning point in strategic mastery came during a high-stakes operation against a rogue faction within the village. Naruto was placed in command of multiple squads, each with different objectives. He had to anticipate enemy reactions, manage limited information, and maintain operational secrecy. He began by establishing control over key choke points, positioning his teams to maximize coverage and minimize risk. He layered contingencies, allowing for adaptive responses to changing circumstances. The rogue faction attempted to outmaneuver him. Unexpected patrols and deliberate misdirections tested Naruto's ability to respond dynamically. Yet he remained calm, observing, analyzing, and predicting the next moves. Subtle adjustments, small signals, repositioning, timing changes, kept the operation on track. By the mission's conclusion, the rogue faction was neutralized without major confrontation, and all intelligence was secured intact. Naruto recognized that strategic mastery was more than planning. It was the ability to adapt fluidly, to anticipate human behavior, and to integrate diverse elements into a coherent, operational flow. Beyond missions, Naruto also refined strategic thinking through simulations. Danzo introduced scenarios where outcomes were not predetermined. Multiple variables shifted dynamically, requiring Naruto to constantly reassess and adapt. He learned to weigh probabilities, to consider both immediate and long-term consequences, and to prioritize actions based on potential impact. These exercises honed the subtle art of influence. Naruto discovered that strategy was as much about perception as action. By guiding adversaries' expectations and subtly shaping their decisions, he could achieve objectives with minimal force. Naruto's allies were integral to this process. Kaido's insight into human behavior allowed him to predict adversary reactions. Ayame's precision ensured that execution matched planning exactly. Together, the trio operated like a single organism, each complementing the other's strengths, covering weaknesses, and enhancing collective capability. Naruto understood that leadership was no longer about authority alone. It was about coordination, clarity, and trust. A master strategist empowered others to act in harmony with the overall vision. Strategic mastery also required psychological insight. Naruto began to recognize patterns of fear, hesitation, and ambition in both allies and adversaries. He learned to manipulate perception subtly, misdirection, timing, and controlled information. By shaping expectations, he could achieve outcomes without direct confrontation, reducing risk while maximizing effectiveness. This understanding of human behavior became as important as any combat skill. It was a force multiplier, enhancing operational success while minimizing unnecessary risk. The culmination of strategic growth occurred during a multi-layered mission that tested every skill Naruto had acquired. He coordinated several route tours across multiple sectors, facing unpredictable environmental and human variables. Obstacles emerged at every turn: miscommunication, unexpected patrols, environmental hazards, and adversary deception. Naruto responded with calm authority. He adapted plans fluidly, issued precise commands, and maintained oversight across all operations. Every element of the mission aligned with his vision, even as circumstances shifted unpredictably. By mission's end, objectives were achieved flawlessly. Naruto's strategic mastery was undeniable. He had transformed from a skilled operative into a tactical orchestrator, capable of shaping events across complex environments. In the quiet aftermath, Naruto reflected on his journey. Strategic mastery was more than skill or power. It was the integration of observation, calculation, intuition, and trust. It required anticipation of human behavior, careful timing, and adaptive action. It demanded patience, resilience, and clarity under pressure. Naruto realized that his growth had been cumulative. Roots training provided discipline. Alliances provided synergy and trust. Challenges and betrayal honed judgment. And every mission, every trial, every success had contributed to his evolution. Even in moments of solitude, Naruto continued to refine his mind. He mentally rehearsed scenarios, predicted outcomes, and explored alternative strategies. Strategic thinking had become instinctive, a quiet undercurrent in every decision, every movement, every observation. He understood that mastery was a lifelong pursuit. The mind was the ultimate weapon, and its sharpness defined the difference between survival and failure, between dominance and submission. By the end of this phase, Naruto had achieved a level of strategic sophistication rare for his age. He could orchestrate operations with multiple moving parts, anticipate human reactions, adapt fluidly to changing circumstances, and guide allies with precision and subtle influence. He was no longer simply a skilled root operative. He was a master strategist, a thinker in the shadows, capable of shaping events with both subtlety and decisiveness. Even in quiet moments, as moonlight filtered through the training halls, Naruto reflected on the path ahead. Power alone was insufficient. Alliances, observation, psychological insight, and careful planning were essential. True mastery combined physical skill, mental acuity, emotional resilience, and strategic foresight. Naruto felt the weight of responsibility, but also the quiet satisfaction of growth. He had become not only stronger, but wiser, ready to face challenges with clarity, courage, and the quiet confidence of one who had mastered both shadow and strategy. Naruto had grown into a leader of precision, strength, and strategic insight. Yet even mastery could not shield him from the complexities of human loyalty. The bonds of trust he had built, through missions, shared danger, and silent understanding, were about to face their greatest test. It began with subtle signs, whispers, half-finished reports, and minor inconsistencies in operational feedback. Naruto's instincts flared, honed by years of observation and missions under Root's rigid training. He noticed how some operatives hesitated when decisions were made, how eyes lingered on him with uncertainty, how allegiance seemed fragile beneath the disciplined surface. The challenge intensified when an external threat emerged, a faction that sought to manipulate Root from within, sowing seeds of doubt and mistrust. Naruto was tasked with uncovering the infiltrators without alarming loyal operatives. Every decision was critical. Misjudgment could fracture alliances, yet inaction could allow betrayal to flourish. He began by observing carefully, studying subtle patterns. Body language, timing of actions, minor hesitations. Each clue became a piece of the puzzle. Naruto's mind worked like a finely tuned instrument, separating genuine loyalty from false allegiance. The first confrontation was unexpected. An operative close to him, whose loyalty had never been questioned, was implicated in transmitting subtle misinformation. Naruto did not act rashly. He approached the situation with calm analysis, weighing evidence, motives, and context. Through discreet investigation, he discovered that the operative had been coerced rather than willingly betraying Root. Naruto faced a choice: expose the operative and risk destabilizing morale, or protect them while neutralizing the external threat. He chose subtlety. He guided the operative quietly, correcting errors and providing a path back to trust. The lesson was clear. Loyalty was often tested under pressure, and a leader's role was to discern, guide, and protect, not only to punish. Another test came from within his inner circle. Kaito and Ayame, his closest allies, were also subjected to manipulation by the rogue faction. False intelligence, misdirection, and psychological pressure sought to weaken their cohesion. Naruto realized that the bonds he had built were both his greatest strength and greatest vulnerability. He acted decisively, yet carefully, communicating openly with them while maintaining operational secrecy. Together, they uncovered the extent of infiltration, neutralized external manipulation, and reinforced trust within the team. This period revealed a deeper truth about leadership and loyalty. It was not enough to command skill or enforce discipline. A leader had to understand the human dimension: fear, ambition, doubt, and act to preserve integrity. Trust could not be assumed. It had to be observed, nurtured, and sometimes restored. Naruto's decisions balanced subtle influence with open guidance, discipline with empathy, and authority with collaboration. By the end of these trials, loyalty had been tested and strengthened. Operatives who had wavered now understood the stakes and the importance of cohesion. Naruto had demonstrated that true leadership relied not only on strategy and strength, but on insight into the hearts and minds of those he guided. He had learned that loyalty was both fragile and resilient, that it could bend under pressure but return stronger when tempered by trust and careful guidance. Even in the shadows, amidst the uncertainty, Naruto found clarity. The test of loyalties had reinforced the principles he had learned throughout his journey. Observe carefully, act decisively, protect the bonds that matter, and understand that leadership was as much about guiding hearts as directing actions. Through subtlety, insight, and measured decisions, he had navigated the first true test of allegiance, and emerged with both his team and his own understanding strengthened. Naruto had grown in ways that few could comprehend. Physical prowess, strategic brilliance, and psychological insight had combined to form a formidable operative. Yet leadership was a different challenge altogether, an art that demanded vision, responsibility, and the ability to navigate the murky terrain of human trust and expectation. Danzo had prepared him indirectly. Every lesson, every trial, every betrayal had been a stepping stone toward understanding authority. Yet even he could not dictate the subtle nuances of commanding others. Naruto would learn that leadership was as much about restraint and observation as it was about power. The first test of leadership arose unexpectedly. A mission was assigned involving multiple root squads, tasked with neutralizing a dangerous rogue faction operating near the village outskirts. Naruto was placed in command, a responsibility that weighed heavily on him. Every decision would impact not just the success of the operation, but the lives of his comrades. He began by assessing the team. Kaito and Ayame, loyal and skilled, were by his side. Other operatives, while capable, required careful direction. Naruto realized that understanding their strengths, weaknesses, and behavioral tendencies was as important as mapping enemy movements. He established clear objectives. Each squad had a specific role, coordinated to achieve the mission with precision. Naruto emphasized subtle communication, ensuring that even when verbal contact was impossible, every operative understood their place in the plan. Leadership, he understood, was not domination. It was guidance. It was the quiet orchestration of action, anticipation, and decision-making. The mission began with a deceptive calm. Teams moved through shadowed terrain, coordinated with precise timing. Naruto monitored movements, adjusted placements, and issued silent signals when subtle changes were necessary. The rogue faction's patrols were unpredictable, their movements fluid, yet Naruto anticipated patterns, positioning teams to minimize risk while maximizing effectiveness. The first challenge emerged when an unexpected patrol intersected the planned route. Naruto made a quick decision. A diversion by Kaito, combined with the repositioning of another squad, allowed the team to remain undetected. This split-second judgment was a reminder that leadership required decisiveness under pressure, and the ability to act calmly when the stakes were high. The deeper into the mission they moved, the heavier the burden of leadership became. Naruto observed individual behaviors carefully. Some operatives hesitated, others acted impulsively. He adjusted commands subtly, redirecting actions without confrontation, ensuring cohesion and maintaining operational integrity. Leadership demanded not only strategy, but emotional intelligence. He learned to read fear, overconfidence, and hesitation, and to guide each operative to act in harmony with the overall plan. At one critical moment, the rogue faction's leader attempted to trap the teams. Naruto quickly assessed the situation, analyzing risk, timing, and possible outcomes. He devised a counter-strategy, instructing squads with subtle hand gestures and eye signals. Kaito's improvisation and Ayame's precision complemented his plan perfectly. Through coordinated action, the threat was neutralized without alerting the entire faction. This was the first instance where Naruto fully understood the weight of leadership. One miscalculation could compromise lives, and one decisive action could preserve them. Leadership also required foresight beyond the immediate operation. Naruto anticipated how outcomes would affect future missions, alliances, and the perception of Root's authority. He adjusted strategy not just for immediate success, but for long-term stability. Every movement, every command, every decision was measured against both current and potential consequences. In this, he began to see the intangible dimension of leadership. Influence. A leader's power was not just in skill or command, but in the ability to shape outcomes subtly, to inspire confidence while maintaining discipline, to balance authority with empathy. Challenges intensified when internal tensions emerged. Some operatives questioned strategy or hesitated under pressure. Naruto addressed these not with anger, but with clarity. He guided them through reasoning, reinforcing objectives, and demonstrating confidence in both the plan and their abilities. He realized that trust was foundational. A leader could command skill, but loyalty and cohesion required respect and belief in the vision. Naruto's actions reinforced both, strengthening bonds without overt control. During the mission, he also faced ethical decisions. Rogue operatives included innocents caught in the crossfire, and Naruto understood that minimizing harm was as critical as mission success. He calculated alternative approaches, choosing paths that reduced unnecessary confrontation while maintaining operational integrity. This balance of strategy, ethics, and foresight became a hallmark of his leadership style. Returning from the mission, the weight of responsibility lingered. Naruto reflected quietly on decisions made, actions taken, and outcomes achieved. Leadership was not simply about success. It was about understanding consequences, guiding others, and remaining calm in the face of uncertainty. Danzo's approval was subtle. He observed Naruto's handling of the operation, acknowledging competence without praise. For Naruto, the real validation came from the lessons learned, and the recognition that his leadership had protected lives and achieved objectives. Leadership also reshaped his relationship with Kaito and Ayame. They were no longer just allies. They were integral partners in command, trusted to execute his vision and adapt when circumstances shifted. Naruto learned to empower them, to delegate while maintaining oversight, and to coordinate actions seamlessly, demonstrating the interdependence of leadership and teamwork. Then, the next phase of leadership was preparation for future threats. Naruto trained teams under simulated crises, teaching operatives to respond with precision, intuition, and discipline. He emphasized observation, strategic thinking, and adaptability. Through repetition and guidance, he cultivated not just skill, but understanding, transforming followers into capable partners in both strategy and execution. Leadership demanded reflection as much as action. Naruto spent quiet hours considering outcomes, alternative strategies, and lessons learned. He understood that mistakes were inevitable, but the measure of leadership was the ability to adapt, correct, and guide others with clarity and purpose. He embraced responsibility, understood the fragility of trust, and recognized the necessity of balancing authority with insight. By the end of this period, Naruto had transformed from a skilled operative into a leader of shadows. He combined strategic mastery, operational skill, emotional intelligence, and foresight into a cohesive approach. He could orchestrate complex operations, anticipate human behavior, and guide allies with precision and subtle influence. Leadership was no longer a role. It was an extension of his identity. Every decision, every command, every observation became part of the responsibility he carried. Even in solitude, Naruto reflected on the path ahead. Leadership, he realized, was a continuous journey. It demanded constant vigilance, adaptability, and insight. The boy who had once followed orders blindly now guided others through uncertainty, balancing strength with wisdom, discipline with empathy, and shadow with light. The lessons of root, betrayal, and strategic mastery had culminated in this moment. Naruto had become not only a skilled operative, but a leader capable of shaping events, protecting lives, and navigating the delicate balance between power and responsibility. The tension in the village was palpable. Naruto had grown from a curious, impulsive boy into a masterful operative and leader of shadows. Yet, nothing in his years of training, missions, or strategic exercises could fully prepare him for what was coming. A rogue faction, more cunning and powerful than any he had faced before, had infiltrated critical parts of the village, threatening not only root, but the entire balance of power. Danzo's presence was silent but watchful. He understood the significance of this moment. For Naruto, this confrontation was not just a test of skill. It was the ultimate measure of everything he had learned. Preparation was meticulous. Naruto coordinated teams, assessed terrain, anticipated enemy movements, and predicted potential traps. Every operative, every ally, every resource had a precise role. He relied on Kaito's improvisation, Ayame's precision, and the loyalty of seasoned operatives who had passed the tests of trust. Yet, the rogue faction was unpredictable, their motives and strategies veiled in shadows. Naruto realized that adaptability, rather than rigid planning, would be the key to survival and victory. The first phase of the confrontation began under the cover of night. Teams moved silently, weaving through forests, alleys, and abandoned structures. Naruto's eyes scanned every shadow, every movement, every subtle sign of enemy presence. The rogue operatives were skilled and alert, but Naruto had learned to anticipate human behavior, to manipulate perception, and to orchestrate outcomes with a subtle precision. Small skirmishes erupted, testing his coordination and decision-making. Naruto responded fluidly, issuing commands, repositioning squads, and neutralizing threats with minimal exposure. Each action demonstrated not just power, but mastery of timing, observation, and strategic thought. The heart of the confrontation came when the rogue leader revealed himself. A figure cloaked in darkness, with abilities that rivaled Naruto's own. The air seemed to shift as they faced each other, both aware that this clash was inevitable and decisive. Naruto's mind raced, balancing strategy with instinct. Every movement, every feint, every calculation mattered. The leader's attacks were relentless, a combination of raw strength, cunning, and misdirection. Naruto countered with equal skill, blending speed, precision, and anticipation. The battle was more than physical. It was mental. Each strike and counterstrike was a conversation, a negotiation of dominance, a test of resolve. Naruto relied on everything he had learned: observation, prediction, adaptability, and the subtle manipulation of perception. He anticipated the enemy's movements, exploiting hesitation and misdirection, turning every challenge into an opportunity to gain advantage. Kaito and Ayame coordinated from the periphery, executing support maneuvers that amplified Naruto's strategy. Together, they created a fluid, dynamic force, unpredictable and coordinated, blending shadows with precision. Amid the chaos, Naruto faced moral and ethical choices. The rogue faction included innocents coerced into participation. Naruto balanced the necessity of victory with the responsibility to minimize unnecessary harm. Every decision weighed the immediate tactical benefit against long-term consequences, reinforcing the lessons of leadership, loyalty, and strategy. He realized that the ultimate confrontation was not only about defeating the enemy, but also about shaping the future of Root and the village. Victory required foresight, clarity, and the integration of all his skills and experience. The turning point came when the rogue leader attempted a devastating ambush. Naruto anticipated the maneuver, adapting his strategy in real time. He orchestrated a counterattack that drew upon every lesson learned: stealth, speed, psychological insight, and coordination. The enemy, caught off guard, faltered under the precision of the combined efforts. Naruto's mastery of timing and perception allowed him to control the flow of battle. He moved like a shadow within shadows, striking decisively while guiding his allies with clarity. Each calculated risk and subtle adjustment reinforced the balance of power in his favor. The final phase required ultimate trust and coordination. Naruto synchronized movements with Kaido and Ayame, aligning attack patterns, cover strategies, and contingencies seamlessly. The rogue leader, formidable and unpredictable, tested every boundary of skill and strategy. Yet Naruto's calm authority, refined judgment, and deep understanding of human behavior turned each challenge into a calculated opportunity. With one final decisive maneuver, Naruto neutralized the leader, ending the confrontation without unnecessary casualties. The rogue faction collapsed, their coordination dismantled by the precision and foresight of Naruto's strategy. In the quiet aftermath, the village breathed a sigh of relief. Naruto surveyed the battlefield, reflecting on the journey that had brought him here. The confrontation had tested every skill, every lesson, and every bond he had forged. Victory was not merely a matter of strength, but of observation, strategy, leadership, and loyalty. Danzo's presence was still silent, yet Naruto felt a sense of approval, not in words, but in the acknowledgement of growth and mastery. The ultimate confrontation revealed the essence of Naruto's evolution. He had transformed from an impulsive, curious boy into a leader capable of orchestrating events, guiding allies, and navigating shadows with precision. He had faced moral dilemmas, ethical challenges, and life-threatening opposition, emerging not only victorious, but wiser, stronger, and more aware of the responsibilities of power. Even in the calm that followed, Naruto remained vigilant. He knew that peace was fragile, and the shadows of future challenges would always linger. Yet, the ultimate confrontation had affirmed his abilities, his leadership, and the bonds of trust and loyalty that would guide him forward. He had learned that true mastery combined physical skill, strategic insight, emotional intelligence, and ethical clarity. The boy raised by Danzo, tempered in shadows, had become a force capable of shaping events, guiding allies, and preserving life in a world defined by uncertainty and danger. In the quiet night, as moonlight fell upon the village, Naruto reflected on the journey. Every trial, every lesson, every mission had prepared him for this moment. The ultimate confrontation was not merely a battle. It was the culmination of growth, trust, and mastery. And though challenges would continue to emerge, he had learned that with clarity, strategy, and steadfast leadership, shadows could be navigated, dangers mitigated, and the future shaped with precision. The village lay quiet under the soft glow of moonlight. Naruto stood alone on a high rooftop, looking over the streets below. He had faced trials that few could imagine, training en route, confronting rogue operatives, navigating moral ambiguity, leading squads, and mastering strategy. Every step of the journey had shaped him, sharpened him, and tested him. The boy who had once arrived en route, impulsive, curious, and inexperienced, was no longer the same. Years of rigorous training, relentless missions, and the guidance of Danzo had transformed him into a masterful operative, a strategist, and a leader capable of navigating shadows with precision. As he reflected, Naruto considered the choices he had made. Some were easy, clear-cut, and unambiguous. Others had been difficult, shadowed in uncertainty, where every decision carried weight and consequence. He had learned that power alone was not enough to shape outcomes. Wisdom, insight, patience, and empathy were equally essential. The rogue operatives, the infiltrations, the internal tests of loyalty, all had taught him the delicate balance between authority and trust. Leadership was not simply about giving orders. It was about understanding people, guiding them, and nurturing their abilities while keeping the larger vision in mind. He thought of Kaido and Ayame, his closest allies. Their presence had been a constant through trials and challenges. Together they had faced danger, deception, and uncertainty. Naruto realized that true leadership relied on these bonds: trust, loyalty, and mutual respect. It was the integration of individual strengths into a coherent force, where synergy and understanding amplified effectiveness far beyond raw skill. Even in quiet moments, he had learned the value of observation, of listening, watching, and understanding before acting. The world was rarely simple, and shadows often concealed motives, intentions, and dangers. By cultivating patience and insight, Naruto had gained clarity that brute force alone could never achieve. Naruto also reflected on the lessons from Danzo. The man had been strict, calculating, and often ruthless. Yet his training instilled discipline, precision, and strategic thinking that would serve Naruto for a lifetime. Danzo's shadow had been long and imposing, but within it, Naruto had carved his own path. He realized that guidance, even when harsh, was a tool, and that growth came from navigating challenges, making mistakes, and learning from consequences. Every mission, every deception, every choice had been a step toward mastery. The weight of responsibility rested heavily on him. He understood that leadership and skill came with obligation. To protect the village, safeguard allies, and navigate threats required constant vigilance. Yet he also recognized the importance of balance between action and reflection, strategy and empathy, strength and morality. Even when confronting rogue factions or morally ambiguous situations, Naruto had learned to weigh outcomes carefully, to consider long-term implications, and to act with integrity. This measured approach became the foundation of his character and leadership style. Naruto thought about the shadows he had walked through. They had tested him, challenged him, and shaped him. Yet, within the darkness, he had also found clarity, strength, and purpose. He had learned that the shadows were not merely obstacles, but reflections of the choices, fears, and potentials within himself. Each challenge, every rogue operative, every betrayal, every mission, had been a mirror. revealing his strengths, weaknesses, and capacity for growth. And through these experiences, he had emerged not just stronger, but wiser, more discerning, and more capable of guiding others through uncertainty. The path forward was uncertain, as it always would be. Naruto knew that the village would face new threats, new rogue elements, and unforeseen challenges. Yet, he also knew that he was prepared. His mastery of skill, strategy, leadership, and human insight gave him the tools to navigate the future. He reflected on the boy he had been, the impulsive, naive child who had arrived en route, and smiled quietly. That boy had grown into someone capable of shaping events, protecting lives, and leading with clarity and purpose. Even in solitude, Naruto found comfort in reflection. He understood that mastery was a lifelong journey, that learning never ceased, and that every choice would shape both himself and the world around him. He welcomed the uncertainty, for it was within challenge that growth resided. He embraced responsibility, not as a burden, but as an opportunity to shape outcomes and guide others. Naruto's gaze drifted toward the horizon. The village slept peacefully, unaware of the battles fought in shadows, the strategies devised, and the choices made to protect it. He felt a quiet satisfaction knowing that his efforts had preserved balance. Yet he also recognized the continuous work ahead. Power, strategy, loyalty, leadership, and ethical clarity. All these were tools, and it was his responsibility to wield them wisely. The lessons of root, the challenges faced, and the bonds formed had prepared him. He was ready for whatever lay beyond the shadows. Finally, Naruto allowed himself a moment of quiet reflection. He had walked through darkness, faced uncertainty, and tested the limits of skill and loyalty. He had learned patience, discernment, and the subtle art of guiding others. He had gained insight into both himself and the world around him. And as he stood under the calm glow of the moon, he understood the greatest lesson of all. True mastery was not merely about power, strategy, or skill. It was about balance, wisdom, and the courage to navigate shadows with clarity and purpose. Naruto's journey had brought him here, and the path forward, though uncertain, was one he was prepared to walk. He turned from the rooftop, letting the night air brush against his face, and moved forward with quiet confidence, ready to face new challenges, protect those he cared for, and continue shaping his destiny under the weight of shadows and the guidance of light. And so, Naruto's journey comes to a quiet pause. Through shadows and challenges, he has grown, learned, and found his path. Remember, even in the darkest moments, patience, wisdom, and courage will guide the way. Rest now. Let your mind wander, and let tomorrow's journey unfold gently.